Hey guys, tonight we're going to dive into a myth so old, dusty, and chaotic that it makes your group chat drama look like ancient poetry. Oh wait, this actually is ancient poetry. You're about to step into the sandals of Hercules, or Heracles if you want to impress your history teacher. But don't worry, you won't need to lift boulders or wrestle lions tonight, just your pillow and maybe a blanket with lions on it. Picture this, a world where gods meddle like overbearing parents, monsters pop up like bad updates, and your punishments are handed down by oracles sitting in vapor-filled caves. Sounds fun? No? Well, too bad you're already here. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, comment down below where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I love seeing just how far this sleepy journey travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It begins, as these things often do, with tragedy. You stand alone. Not physically, there are plenty of people around you, muttering, watching, avoiding eye contact, like you're the last donut on the table. But emotionally, you're a planet with no orbit. You've done something horrible. Not out of malice, not even by choice, but under the haze of madness sent by a goddess with a grudge bigger than a centaur's ego. Hera. She hates you, mostly because you exist, and partly because you're Zeus' illegitimate son. To be fair, Zeus was kind of on a mythological Tinder rampage back then, so that's not really your fault. And yet here you are, ashamed, haunted. You've killed your own family. This isn't a metaphor. It's the part that historians gloss over quickly because it's too heavy for the classroom. Ancient texts, especially Euripides' Hercules, hint at the horror you endured. Some say it was after your glorious battles. Others say it came before. Historians still argue about the timeline, like it'll somehow make it less tragic. To atone, you seek guidance. Not from a therapist, those weren't invented yet, but from the Oracle of Delphi, a woman who speaks in riddles while sitting above a chasm that smells faintly of future and very strongly of sulfur. You enter the temple. The air is thick with incense and destiny. You ask what must be done. The Pythia speaks. 12 labors, 12 impossible tasks. Complete them, and perhaps, just perhaps, you'll find peace, or redemption, or at least a break from the nightmares. You don't argue. You don't cry. You don't even ask who decided this was the right number. Fun fact, some sources claim there were originally 10 tasks, but 2 didn't count because you got help, which is the ancient Greek equivalent of someone yelling. You used cheat codes. The oracle didn't mention that the guy assigning your labors, King Eurystheus, is the human equivalent of a wet toga, a coward, a puppet, but with power, which is a terrible combination. He's also your cousin, technically. But family trees get weird when gods start pollinating everything. He greets you with the enthusiasm of someone who just realized their boss hired a demigod as an intern. He doesn't want you to succeed, not really. He just wants you gone, preferably in several pieces. And yet, despite all of this, despite the loss, the shame, the celestial vendetta, you accept the task. Not for glory, not for fame, but because standing still is unbearable. You gather your things, a club, a cloak. Not much. You don't need armor right now. What you need is a direction, and for the first time in a while, you have one. Outside, the sun sets behind Mount Helicon, casting long shadows over olive groves and crumbling stones. Somewhere out there, a lion waits. A lion with skin no weapon can pierce, but we'll get to that. For now, you lie down beneath the stars, your head resting on a makeshift bed of leaves. The night is quiet, save for the occasional owl hoot or the gentle chime of a distant temple bell. You don't sleep easily, but you do sleep, because tomorrow you hunt, and not just any beast. The first of many. You wake before dawn, the sky a pale bruise of lavender and deepening blue, the kind of color that feels both gentle and ominous like a lullaby sung in reverse. Your breath fogs in the morning air, and the earth beneath you feels damp, soft. The scent of pine needles and last night's regret lingers, but you rise. You always rise. You're headed toward Nemea now, a region of quiet hills and sleepy villages that don't yet realize they're about to be part of your story. The people whisper of a lion. Not a lion that just happens to be big or cranky. No, this one is built wrong. Skin like iron, claws sharper than gossip in a small town, and a temper? Let's just say if this lion had social media, it would be permanently banned. You travel light, just your club, a slingshot, and a grim sense of obligation. And okay, maybe a snack. Even demigods get hungry. You munch on some figs as you pass olive trees that have probably seen more bloodshed than winemaking. It's not long before you stumble upon signs. A mutilated goat, a shredded cart, a shepherd who looks like he aged 10 years in one night. He can't speak, just points toward the hills with trembling fingers. You nod, thank him, and head that way. The Nemean lion doesn't lurk. It reigns. There's no subtlety to its destruction. You find bones scattered like dice across the grass. Even a bronze spear bent into a sad horseshoe. Whoever tried that clearly didn't read the fine print. Conventional weapons not accepted. Here's the twist. You can't stab this thing. Not with arrows, not with blades. According to legend and a few very terrified survivors, the lion's hide is impervious to metal. Historians still debate whether this was meant literally or as a metaphor for he was really, really strong. Either way, it's your problem now. You track the creature to a cave with 2 entrances. Smart beast, knows how to escape. But you're smarter. You block one entrance with boulders, sweat running down your brow like condensation on a clay jug. Then, with your club ready, you march into the dark. Inside, it smells like wet fur, copper, and something ancient. The kind of place that makes your instincts scream, don't, even as your pride shouts do. You charge anyway. Your first strike lands square on its head, and the club splinters like kindling. The lion doesn't roar. It exhales sharply, like it's offended. Then it lunges. It's a blur of fur, claws, and terrifying sound. You dodge, barely. Your arm gets raked, not deeply, but enough to remind you that this isn't a story. This is happening. To you, no weapons. No help. Just you and a lion in the dark. So you do something very stupid. You drop everything and leap on its back. Wrestling a normal lion? Bad idea. Wrestling this lion? Psychotic. And yet, this is where the myth becomes real. Your fingers search for leverage, gripping its neck, its ears, anything. You remember old wrestling holds? The ones you practiced against centaurs and your overconfident uncles at festivals. You find its throat, and then you squeeze. The lion thrashes, smashing against the cave walls, trying to buck you off like a horse with a vendetta, but you don't let go. You hold, even as your lungs burn and your arms tremble. Minutes feel like years, and then it goes still. You don't cheer. You don't celebrate. You just lie there, panting, your cheek pressed against the beast's still warm flank. The silence is overwhelming. Eventually, you drag it into the light. The sun hits its golden fur, and it shines like a god. Which is awkward, because you're about to wear it. Yeah, here's the thing. Since no blade can pierce the hide, you improvise. Using one of the lion's own claws, you skin it. Gross? Absolutely. Effective? Oh yes, it becomes your new armor. Heavy, but invincible. Smells a bit like wet dog mixed with ego, but it grows on you. Later historians would say this labor symbolized conquering brute force with cunning and endurance. Others say it was an allegory for facing one's own monstrous nature. And of course, there's a camp that insists the lion never existed at all and was just a metaphor for taxes or in-laws. You can't win with academics. You head back to King Eurystheus, dragging the carcass like a very dramatic door prize. He takes one look at the beast and hides inside a bronze jar. Not joking. The king literally leaps into a pot like an embarrassed crab and orders his messenger to speak on his behalf. He declares your labor complete, but also refuses to see you in person again. From now on, you'll report to a herald. The king's version of please stop emailing me directly. I leaven to go. The morning after your lion wrestling debut feels different, not just because you're now wearing a 300-pound cat as a onesie, but because something fundamental inside you has shifted. You're sore, yes, and your right arm keeps twitching like it's arguing with gravity, but there's also a quiet clarity in your steps. You faced death without a sword or strategy, and walked away. Kind of like passing your first driving test in a chariot with no brakes. You don't get much time to reflect, though. Your second labor arrives in the form of a scroll, delivered by a nervous courier who's visibly relieved you don't bite. He bows awkwardly and blurts out the task like it's a medical diagnosis. Slay the Lernian Hydra. No punctuation. No context, just that. You sigh, adjust your lion cloak, and set out south toward the marshes of Lerna. Locals call it the wet armpit of Argolis. It's a place where the air tastes like rot, where mosquitoes travel in organized gangs, and where you're 97% sure your sandals will never be dry again. As you approach the swamp, you begin to hear stories. Not from kings or scholars this time, but from fishermen, old women, and children with wide eyes. They talk about the Hydra like it's less of a monster and more of a curse. It poisons the land. Animals disappear. Even the water itself curdles around it. And the worst part, cut off one head, 2 more grow back. Classic buy one, get one deal, but with necks. You roll your shoulders, glance at your club, now more like a stub after last time, and consider your options. Conventional attacks are clearly off the table again. But you've got something new this time. A friend. Enter Iolaus, your nephew, travel companion, and part-time torchholder. Think of him as your unpaid intern with surprisingly good hair, He insists on helping, even though the last time he tried to fight anything, it was a shadow, and he tripped over a goat. Still, you let him come. The two of you wade into the marsh at dawn. The reeds whisper secrets. Frogs fall silent as you pass. The water gets thicker until it's more sludge than liquid, and then you see it, coiled on a rock, massive, ancient, and wrong. The Hydra. Its body undulates like it's made of smoke and nightmares. 9 heads twitch and swivel, each with yellow eyes and teeth shaped like regrets. 1 head snarls. Another yawns. A third sneezes. Adorable, in a terrifying, ruin-your-day kind of way. You make the first move. Charging forward, you swing a sword, not because you think it'll work, but because you're curious. And sure enough, when you slice off a head, 2 more burst forth from the stump, like uninvited guests at a dinner party. You leap back, now outnumbered by math and poor decision-making. This is where Iolaus earns his demigod merit badge. He grabs a torch from the supplies, lights it, and when you slice off another head, he cauterizes the stump before new ones can sprout. It's clumsy at first. You nearly sin your own beard, but it works. 1 by 1 you slash. He burns, slash, burn, repeat. It becomes a rhythm, a dance, a grotesque 2-man musical where the chorus is angry hissing and the percussion is your heartbeat thudding in your ears. Eventually, only the immortal head remains. Yeah, I forgot to mention that part. One of the heads can't die, like at all. It just keeps biting and cackling like a weird uncle who won't leave the wedding. So you do the reasonable thing. You cut it off, jam it in a sealed bronze jar, and bury it under a rock the size of an ox. A very flat, very disapproving ox. The Hydra collapses, its body steaming, its poison leaking into the swamp. You don't cheer. Instead, you both sit on a log, too tired to move, and let the insects sing the victory song. Later, you dip your arrows into the Hydra's blood. Why? Because someone tells you it's deadly, and you think, sure, why not weaponize ancient venom today? You now possess arrows so poisonous that even a scratch can kill. Useful, foreshadow why. Historians agree that this labor was meant to show intelligence and teamwork. But some argue that the Hydra represents internal struggles, cutting down fears, only to have them multiply. There's also one niche theory that the Hydra was a symbol for local taxation, which honestly feels personal. You return to the city, where King Eurystheus again refuses to see you in person. This time he tries to disqualify your victory claims you had help. Iolaus, after all, did some torch work. But the people know. The bards are already composing songs, mostly because they love a good monster-slaying rhyme scheme. 2 down, and already your legend grows louder than your footsteps. You wake up with swamp hair and a faint scent of roasted snake still clinging to your lion cloak. It's not glamorous, but hey hero work rarely is, and you're barely back from the Lernian Hydra affair when the next scroll appears. You don't even have time to soak your feet or file a complaint with that jar. This time the task reads, capture the Cyrenian hind, a deer. You blink, tilt your head, and check the parchment again. It's not a typo. This isn't just any deer, though. It's the Cyrenian hind, a creature so elusive it makes ghosts look clingy. Golden antlers, bronze hooves, divine origin, sacred to Artemis herself, which is frankly a problem, because if there's one goddess you don't want tick off, It's the one with 1,000 arrows and a very short fuse. Still, orders are orders. You head north toward the forests of Serenea, where mist curls around the trees like it has a secret, and birds stop singing whenever you pass. Locals point you toward a clearing, warning you the hind moves like wind and vanishes like bad dreams. One old man swears he saw it once, 70 years ago. Then he falls asleep mid-sentence. So you begin your hunt. But this isn't the sweaty, sprinting, monster-smashing kind of hunt. No, this one's different, slower, more thoughtful. You track hoof prints, study broken branches, learn to breathe with the wind instead of against it. It's like mindfulness, but with more mud. Eventually you catch a glimpse, a shimmer between trees, a golden glint. The softest sound like stardust stepping on snow. You follow. Every day you get closer. Every night the hind slips away, almost teasing. You grow leaner, quieter. You stop carrying your club. It's too loud. You start moving barefoot, your sandals squeak. You blend into the woods, into the rhythm of the forest itself. Weeks pass. Yes, weeks. This labor takes a year, give or take. You basically become part deer yourself, surviving on berries and stream water, growing a beard that small birds consider nesting in. You start to understand something. This hind isn't just a creature. It's a symbol, a test of patience, respect, and restraint. And maybe, just maybe, it's watching you too. Finally, one morning, you spot her drinking from a river at dawn. You freeze. She lifts her head. Your eyes meet. You move like thought. A net, not a weapon. A silent leap. A perfect arc. You land on soft ground, wrap the net around her gently, and wait. She doesn't thrash. She doesn't flee. She just watches, as if saying, "Okay, mortal, let's see what you do next." Others suggest she admired your respect for her creature and let you pass. Either way, you carry the hind across mountains and valleys, taking extra care not to jostle her or let her hooves chip. You reach Tyrans, and King Eurystheus rushes out, thrilled. He's already imagining the royal petting zoo. But as soon as he lays eyes on her, the hind bolts, gone, back to the forest, back to freedom. You shrug. That's between him and the goddess now. The message is clear. Just because you can capture something doesn't mean you get to keep it. And sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to let go. As you wander off toward your next labor, you remember a weird fact one of the forest priests told you. The ancient Egyptians believed deer were connected to lunar cycles, messengers of the gods. It feels oddly fitting. Also, fun fact historians debate whether the bronze hooves detail is metaphorical, or if ancient poets were just flexing their creativity like kids with glitter glue. Regardless, you completed the task. 3 down. And you're starting to understand that not all monsters wear scales. Some wear gold. Some wear silence. And some, like this labor, teach you that glory can arrive not through conquest, but in quiet moments beneath old trees. It's barely daybreak, and you're already wondering what fresh nonsense awaits. Your lion cloak smells like leaf mold, your back is sore from sleeping on rocks, and your breakfast, some dried figs and extremely judgmental olives, tastes like resignation. Then, as expected, the next scroll arrives, clean the Augean stables. You stare at the message like it just personally insulted your intelligence. You're Hercules, slayer of monsters, wrestler of death, wearer of lion pelts and occasional philosopher of pain, and now, apparently, janitor. Still, orders are orders. You trudge toward the kingdom of Elis, muttering under your breath. It's ruled by King Augeas, a man with more cattle than common sense. The stables? Home to thousands of divine, immortal cows. The smell alone could drop a titan. When you arrive, you finally see it. Acres of muck, mountains of manure, rivers of regret. The air practically peels the inside of your nostrils. Now, here's the kicker. Augeas swears these stables have never been cleaned. Not once. Not in 30 years. Historians estimate that would equal around 60,000 tons of divine cow waste. That's enough to smother a small village and mildly offend several larger ones. You meet Augeas himself. He's got the kind of smile that says, "I exploit heroes for free labor." You politely offer to clean the entire place in one day on the condition that he gives you 1/10 of his cattle in return. He agrees with the enthusiasm of someone who thinks you're full of it. Spoiler, you're not. You could shovel. You could scrub. You could curse the gods. But instead, you spot 2 rivers nearby, the Alpheus and the Peneus, just minding their watery business. And suddenly, you have a plan. You grab a few boulders, break open the walls of the stable, like you're installing an infinity pool, and divert the rivers. Nature does the dirty work. You stand back, arms crossed, watching a biblical tide of cow filth wash away centuries of neglect. It's oddly satisfying, like pressure washing a driveway if the driveway had been cursed by Hades. Within hours, the stables are sparkling. Birds return, flowers bloom, the cows moo appreciatively, maybe. Or they're plotting revenge. Hard to tell with cows. The job's done. But Augeas, he's not thrilled. He finds out you used rivers and claims it doesn't count. Says you cheated. Refuses to give you the cattle. You flex dramatically, but don't crush him, mostly because you're trying out this new thing called restraint. Still, you drag him to court. His own son testifies in your favor. Augeas is forced to pay up, eventually. But Eurystheus, that delightful tyrant in training, hears about the river trick and decides this labor doesn't count. Yes, really, historians still argue about this. Was it clever innovation? Or did it violate the unwritten rule of manual labor only? No one agrees. Though one obscure scholar once theorized that Eurystheus was simply jealous of your biceps. That guy probably got fired, but you respect the honesty. As for you, you leave Elis a little cleaner, a little grumpier, and smelling faintly of algae and triumph. And you realize something. Sometimes strength isn't just about lifting things, it's about knowing which things not to lift. Also, you've learned to never underestimate the politics of poop. So you've cleaned a celestial scale porta-potty with 2 rivers and lived to smell about it. Naturally, Eurystheus, your favored anxiety-ridden royal, decides to pivot from cow pies to killer pigeons. The 6th scroll flutters in on a draft, practically chirping. You shoulder your lion hoodie, remember the Nemean fashion statement, and hike north through Arcadia's rolling hills. The land smells of pine resin and goat negotiations. Villagers greet you with the enthusiasm of people who've been losing relatives to airborne cutlery. One shepherd swears he heard metallic screeches so loud they bounced off Mount Selene like bad flute practice. You pat his shoulder and move on. Flute trauma is real. By midday, you reach Lake Stymphalus, a murky expanse ringed with reeds taller than temple columns. The air vibrates with a faint clinking, like coins rattling in a tin-feathered saw blades, sharpening themselves. You crouch behind a boulder, peeking through cattails, and spot them. Hundreds of birds the size of small wolves, wings shimmering like polished shields, beaks glinting like fresh daggers. Every wing flap sprinkles lethal bronze feathers that stick in trees and, occasionally, unfortunate passers-by. Historical fact of the evening. Ancient writers, including Pausanias, placed real Stymphalus in a wetland notorious for malaria. Many modern scholars think the birds allegorized disease or raiders. Either way, the locals just see death from above. Sneaking closer? Impossible. They detect motion faster than hometown gossip. Fighting head-on? Please, this isn't your first mythological rodeo. You need a hack. And that's when you remember, Athena owes you one. She shows up, no long speeches, just a casual goddess drop of crotala, bronze castanets forged by Hephaestus himself. Basically, divine maracas designed to annoy anything with ears. You test one rattle. It screeches like a chariot wheel begging for oil. Perfect. With grape-sized courage tablets, raisins, in your pocket. You step into the marsh. Mud sucks at your ankles. Mosquitoes audition for bloodthirsty cameo roles. You raise the crotala and shake. CLAN, gee-clang clang. Instant chaos. The birds explode upward in a metallic storm, shrieking like broken trumpets. Feathers zip past your head, slicing reeds clean through. You duck, swing, rattle again louder, faster. It's the mythic equivalent of setting off every car alarm in a 10-block radius. Panicked and disoriented, the flock swirls into a tight vortex above the lake. That's your cue. You whip out the Hydra venom arrows you brewed back in Section 3, Sustainable Monster Recycling, and knock the first shaft. Release. One bird drops, then another. Each arrow only needs a scratch. The poison does the rest. You keep the rhythm. Shake, shoot, shuffle, quip. Should have migrated south, feather brains. Soon the sky rains bronze carcasses, splashing into the water like gruesome pebbles. But you're not here for extermination, just eviction. Once half the flock is down and the survivors are sufficiently traumatized, they bolt east in a screaming bronze cloud, bound for whatever underworld travel agency books homicidal fowl. Silence crashes over the marsh. Reeds sway. Water ripples. You exhale and immediately realize your arms are vibrating from crotala recoil. Congratulations. You've invented the first full-body percussion workout. You gather a few fallen birds as proof, careful not to brush against the razor feathers. Their plumage gleams, each quill a deadly guilt trip. Curiosity corner. Later Hellenistic jewelers supposedly fashioned ornamental brooches inspired by these feathers, because why not turn trauma into accessories? On your trek back, you ponder what the labor really means. Driving out pests? Sure, but maybe it's also about confronting intangible threats. Fear, disease, the stuff that flutters at society's edges. Historiadors aimed at disputem say the birds represented a literal species, or merely symbolized swamp-borne illness. You mutter, because nothing says hero like mid-hike historiography. You reach Tyrants at dusk, lugging a sack of bronze beaks. The herald meets you at the gate. Eurystheus is surprised. Hiding behind a curtain, the birds land with a clang that echoes through the courtyard. Mission accomplished. No loopholes, no disqualifications this time. Even the king can't spin giant metal owls from Hades into cheating. He clears his throat, and still unseen announces labor 6 complete. Then he tosses down the next scroll like a hot brick and scurries off stage. You roll out your shoulders, feeling marsh, grime crack. 6 down, halfway mark approaching. You've slain, captured, and now noise polluted your way through trials that would insta-fail other heroes. And you're starting to pick up a pattern. Brute strength gets headlines, but brains and occasionally obnoxious percussion keep you breathing. As night settles, you sit beneath a cypress, polishing a bronze feather into a makeshift letter opener. You think about patience learned chasing that hind, about creativity learned rerouting rivers, and about the ear-splitting joy of scaring birds with goddess maracas. You're not just accumulating victories. You're collecting lessons, crucial, quirky, and occasionally compost-scented. Tomorrow will bring another scroll, another problem. Maybe more monsters, maybe something weirder. But for now, you watch sparks drift from your campfire, rising like tiny bronze birds to join the constellations. Somewhere up there, in the tapestry of stars, your story is already being stitched in. Sleep comes soft, inevitable, deserved. You wake up to birdsong. But this time it's the regular, kind, fluffy, non-metallic, and entirely uninterested in turning your spleen into a nest. The breeze carries hints of fig blossoms and baked clay. It's a good morning to face certain death. You unroll the new scroll with your usual mix of dread and dramatic flair. It reads, "Capture the Cretan bull." Oh, wait, you haven't even gotten there yet. Spoiler, it involves more poop. You set sail from the port of Nauplian, the wooden deck creaking beneath your sandals. The sea smells briny and eternal, dotted with jellyfish and philosophical fishermen. One even shouts, "Watch out for the bull with the crazy eyes," before rowing away like he just remembered rent was due. The voyage takes a few days, enough time to nap, Riopli lion grease, and ponder this next bizarre labor. A bull in Crete. That alone is suspiciously vague. When you arrive in Knossos, the palace is all spirals, red columns, and frescoes of people jumping over bulls like it's just another Tuesday. You start to piece things together. This isn't just any bull. This is the Cretan bull, the one Pasiphae fell in love with. We won't get into the details. The one that fathered the Minotaur and the one that's now gone rogue, smashing vineyards and flattening olive groves like a horned tank with hay fever. Historical fun bite. The Cretan bull is often associated with Poseidon, who sent it from the sea. King Minos was supposed to sacrifice it, but didn't. Classic divine disobedience. Some scholars think the bull reflects older Minoan fertility rituals, while others just think it's a really cool metaphor for chaos on 4 legs. Locals direct you to the plains outside the city, where the bull's most recent tantrum involved trampling 6 amphorae of wine and 1 wedding reception. You follow hoof prints the size of dinner plates through dry grass and fig orchards until you hear it, the low, angry rumble of 900 kilograms of snorting aggression. You peek over a hill, and there it is, massive, white as moonlight, and mad as Hades on a Monday. Steam puffs from its nostrils like it's part locomotive. The horns sweep forward like ivory sighs, and its eyes shimmer with just enough intelligence to be a problem. Your task? Don't kill it. Capture it. Always with the capture. You try the polite, approach-slow movements, calm voice like you're coaxing a cat off a bookshelf. The bull responds by charging a boulder until it splits. You rethink your strategy. Okay, what calms a bull? Music? No liar? Fire? Too destructive. A bucket of grain and gentle compliments. Hard pass. Instead, you grab a length of rope from your satchel and start plodding. The bull grazes nearby, stomping periodically like it's still in a bad mood from 2000 BCE. You creep behind a thicket and smear your boots in olive oil, because nothing says stealth like slippery feet. With every ounce of stealth you've picked up from shadowing deer and ducking birds, you inch closer, rope coiled in your hand like a venomous snake. One wrong crunch and you're stew. You hold your breath, and then movement. The bull shifts, snorts, turns. You freeze, but instead of charging, it yawns. A nap? Yes, divine timing. You bolt forward, swing the rope with a whirl, and land a perfect loop around its horns. Immediately, it wakes, and immediately it's very unhappy. You hold on like your life depends on it, because it kind of does. The bull bucks, twists, drags you 20 feet through rocks, past confused lizards and a goat that looks impressed. You grip tighter, slowly working your way toward its massive neck like a rodeo acrobat with ambition issues. Eventually, miraculously, you loop the second rope around its front legs. It stumbles, still snorting, but collapses onto its side. You hold it down, whispering things like, "You're doing amazing, sweetie," while sweat pours down your face. Once it's bound, you rest your head against its steaming hide. It's over. You did it. You roped the thunderous, woman-seducing, God-defying bovine. Maybe you missed your calling as the world's first cow therapist. Curiosity detour. Some depictions of Hercules show him wrestling the bull underwater, possibly referencing early scuba combat. Okay, not really, but ancient divers were a thing. Scholars also argue whether this bull and the Marathonian bull, killed later by Theseus, are the same animal or just mythological cousins with anger issues. You don't know or care. You just know you need a boat. Fortunately, Minos is happy to loan one, probably eager to get rid of the bull and the awkward backstory attached to it. Back across the Aegean you go, tied up bull in tow, looking like the weirdest ferry service in Greek history. The animal glares at everyone, occasionally snorting at seagulls like he's filing complaints. When you arrive in Tyrann's, Eurystheus doesn't even come out. He takes one look from the balcony, screams something about "not again," and orders the bull released. The animal gallops off toward Marathon, so yes, these myths connect like a very bloody soap opera. 7 down. You sit on a barrel, cracked lips and bull hair clinging to your arms, wondering if there's a spa for heroes, or at least a decent foot soak. Still, there's something satisfying in this one. No arrows, no poison, just strategy, rope, and tenacity. You smile, then wince because your left shoulder might be dislocated. But hey, that's a problem for tomorrow, you. You know things are getting weird when your next labor involves poop. Like official, government-sanctioned poop. You're not talking about symbolic darkness or metaphorical decay. You're talking about an actual river of filth, and your job is to take a nice long swim through it. Kind of. So when the scroll arrives and says, "Clean the Augean stables," you actually laugh. Like a dry, bitter laugh, the kind people make right before a mental breakdown or after burning toast for the third time. The backstory? King Augeas of Elis owns a stable housing, more livestock than some small countries. Cattle, sheep, oxen, all sacred, all divine, all continuously pooping for decades. Historians estimate these stables hadn't been cleaned in 30 years. That's longer than most olive trees live. And yes, historians still debate whether this labor was meant as punishment or proof of cleverness. Some say Eurystheus was trying to humiliate you. Others think it's a metaphor for political reform, out with the old filth, in with the new regime. Either way, it smells suspiciously personal. You arrive at the edge of Elis and nearly faint from the stench. It's not just manure. It's aged manure. Manure that's been through things. It's fermented, matured, and developed a personality. You cough. Your lion skin coughs. Even the flies look tired. Augeas greets you with that smug, noble smile that makes you want to drop-kick him into a bucket. He's skeptical. You promise to clean the entire stable in one day without magic. He agrees, thinking it's impossible. You make a mental note to return his smirk when this is over. Now, you could go at this with a rake and a lot of self-loathing. But you're Hercules, not some underpaid stable boy. So instead, you take a walk by the nearby rivers, Alpheus and Peneus. Wide, strong, and very much not full of cow dung. You study the terrain. The stables are slightly downhill. The rivers are nearby, but just far enough to make things tricky. Then it hits you. Not the smell, though that's also very much present, but the idea. You're going to reroute the rivers, bring the water to the stables. Let nature do the scrubbing. Academic footnote time. Engineers still admire this myth. Some believe it reflects early irrigation or hydro-engineering in ancient Greece. Others argue it's all poetic license, but hey, even poetic license can teach physics. So you grab a shovel. Well, two. One for each hand. And you start digging like a demigod with a vendetta. Your muscles burn. Dirt cakes your arms. You mutter insults at rocks that won't move. Every now and then, a curious goat watches you like it's judging your technique. Hours pass. Sweat pours. Birds circle overhead, confused by your trench-digging frenzy. Finally, the channels connect. You pry open the embankments, and with a roar that sounds suspiciously like applause from the gods, or maybe just a collapsing beaver dam, the rivers surge forward. You sprint back to the stables, where the water barrels in like a tidal wave of divine cleanliness. It crashes through stalls, smashes through decades of hardened waste, and carries it all out the back like history's most horrifying slip and slide. The animals, to their credit, mostly sidestep the chaos. A few moo in protest, but honestly, they seem happier already. You give one particularly fluffy sheep a thumbs up. It headbutts you gently. You choose to take that as a compliment. By sunset, the place sparkles. Well, relatively. The scent still lingers like a cursed candle, but the filth is gone. Augeas returns, eyes wide, mouth hanging open like someone just told him taxes were optional. You clean your nails casually with a twig. You cheated, he finally says. No magic, you remind him. just physics and sweat and a concerning relationship with trench tools. Eurystheus says this one doesn't count since you did it for pay, even if you never got it. Bureaucracy at its most divine. Still, you can't deny the satisfaction. You cleaned 30 years of filth in one day, not with brute force but with cunning. And floodwater, lots of floodwater. Weird trivia moment. Some later Roman versions of the myth say the dung turned into gold when blessed by Jupiter. So yes, there's a version of this story where divine poop literally becomes treasure. Historians side-eye that version often. As night falls, you lean against a tree, hair damp from river spray, arms sore from digging. You think about how far you've come, from lion skinning to god plumbing. 8 labors done. 4 to go. You close your eyes. You're tired. Not just physically, but bone tired. The kind of tired that settles into your soul like sediment. But something tells you the next task will wake you right up. Because if you thought bowls and poop were bad, just wait till you meet the birds. You wake to the sound of wings. Not the peaceful kind, like morning doves cooing outside your window. No, these are sharp, metallic flutters, like someone strapped swords to pigeons and gave them a grudge. Welcome to Lake Stymphalus. Your next labor sounds deceptively adorable on paper. Drive away the Stymphalian birds. Oh, birds, cute, feathery. Probably sing sweet songs, right? Wrong. These are not your grandma's canaries. These birds are the ancient equivalent of weaponized drones. They don't sing, they shriek. Their feathers are metallic, and when they drop them, they fall like dagger rain. Their beaks, sharp enough to pierce bronze armor. Their poop, acidic, because of course it is. You approach the marsh, nose wrinkling at the sulfur-sticky scent of stagnant water and bird droppings that could dissolve a bronze shield. The trees are twisted, leafless, and eerily quiet, except for the occasional clang of something feathery sharpening itself on rock. It's beautiful, in a dystopian sort of way. Like if a haunted aviary had a baby with a war zone. You squint into the gloom and spot them, dozens, maybe hundreds of the feathered fiends. Their eyes glow like old coals, and they chatter with the kind of energy that says, "We have no problem taking you out." A bird-scaring maraca forged by a god. Historians still debate whether this represents early scarecrow technology or just a metaphor for creative problem-solving. So you climb a nearby tree, rattle in hand. The thing hums with a strange energy, like it's been waiting centuries to party. You close your eyes, say a silent prayer to whoever handles noise complaints on Mount Olympus, and shake it. Cockling, cockling. The sound rips through the marsh like a thunderclap. It's not pleasant. It's not elegant, but it works. The birds scream like actual horror movie screams and burst into flight. They swarm in chaotic spirals, confused and furious. Some dive toward you. You duck, swing your club, and send one spiraling like a very angry paper airplane. Another tries to pierce your arm with its beak. You catch it mid-flight and hurl it into the reeds. More. Shake, shake, shaking. The air fills with chaos and feathers, and a smell that can only be described as ancient death chicken. You don't chase them. You've done your job. You've cleared the marsh. The locals who've been hiding behind boulders and praying to whichever deity covers bird-related trauma slowly emerge and cheer you on. You collapse by the water's edge, catching your breath. The sky is clearer now. Still gray, but less impending doom and more moody afternoon, destroying crops and terrifying locals. Or maybe it was all metaphor, the birds representing invasive forces, and you, the heroic remover of chaos. You notice something strange while cleaning your weapon. One of the fallen bird's feathers, metallic, gleaming, doesn't rust in water. You keep it. Maybe it'll come in handy later. Or maybe you'll gift it to a blacksmith who's into weird accessories. You leave the marsh behind, boots squelching in the mud, arms sore, ears still ringing. 9 labors down, 3 more to go. You think maybe you're getting the hang of this. And then again, every time you think that the gods throw in something with hooves, wings, or questionable hygiene, and you just know the next one's going to be bull. You've barely shaken the last bits of acid bird poop off your sandals when you find yourself crossing the Aegean. Again, this time, your destination is the island of Crete, where your next challenge awaits. A bull, but not just any bull. The Cretan bull. You step off the boat and the heat hits you like a jealous god. The island buzzes with life, olive trees sway in the breeze. Goats bleat from rocky cliffs, and locals eye you like you're the pre-show to something dramatic. They're not wrong. Now, this bull, it's not some sleepy farm creature munching grass and blinking slowly at clouds. It's sacred, or cursed, or both. You've honestly lost count. Some say Poseidon sent it as a gift to King Minos to be sacrificed. But Minos, in a classic move of thanks, I'll keep it, decided it was too beautiful to kill. Poseidon was less than pleased, so he made the bull go mad. And when an immortal sea god throws a tantrum, nobody gets off easy. The bull has been terrorizing Crete ever since smashing walls, uprooting vineyards, chasing fishermen straight into the surf. It's massive, pale as moonlight, with eyes like boiling milk and breath that smells like sulfur and tragedy. You track it inland over sun-blasted fields and past toppled statues. You spot signs of its passage everywhere: gouged earth, shattered amphorae, one sandal that clearly did not outrun anything. Eventually you find it grazing near the ruins of an old temple, peaceful, almost picturesque, like something off a vintage postcard titled "Moments Before Disaster." You swear the ground trembles, and then it charges. You sidestep the first rush barely. The wind from its passing nearly knocks you off balance. Your fingers graze its flank. It's smooth, hot, and ridiculously fast for something that weighs as much as a chariot. It circles back. You roll, dodge, grab onto its horn, and suddenly you're airborne. Not flying so much as flailing artistically. You hit the ground with a crunch that makes your spine file a formal complaint, but you don't stop. You lunge again, this time grabbing both horns, digging your heels in like a farmer with particularly high-stakes livestock. It bucks. It thrashes. You hang on like a very determined tick. Finally, with a groan that sounds like a dying war drum, the bull collapses. Still alive, still snorting, but no longer trying to flatten olive groves. You've done it. You lead it back down the mountain, scratched, bruised, possibly concussed. The villagers cheer, although one child does ask if you can teach him how to ride it next. You politely decline. Fun historical fact: the Cretan bull is sometimes tied to the myth of the Minotaur. Yes, that Minotaur. Historians still debate whether this bull is the father of that infamous half-man, half-bull beast. Either way, Greek mythology clearly had a thing for complicated bovine relationships. You tie the bull up on the beach. It's calmer now, munching on reeds and blaring at seagulls. Before you leave, a Cretan elder hands you a carved talisman, something old, worn smooth by generations. For protection, she says. You nod. You'll take any edge you can get. You board your boat as the sun dips low, golden light painting the sea in honeyed stripes. The bull watches you go with narrowed eyes, like it's memorizing your face in case you ever come back. You probably won't. That's 10. 10 tasks completed. 2 more await. You should feel confident, triumphant, heroic. Instead, you just feel sore. Your hands still smell like burnt fur, and your left leg is developing a limp that'll make Spartan soldiers chuckle behind your back. But you press on, because that's what heroes do. Even when the next labor is on a different continent, you don't get long to rest. The moment your sandals dry from the saltwater spray of Crete, you're pointed in the direction of your next labor. And this one? It's less muscle your way through and more steal something without getting vaporized. A region so far off the grid it might as well be labeled, "Here be nightmares" on a map. Diomed's, their charming owner, is a son of Ares, yes, that Ares, and he's got the violent temper and jawline to prove it. His favorite pastime? Feeding prisoners to his horses. It's a hobby, really, very niche. You arrive at his kingdom under a bruised sky. The wind howls like it's trying to warn you off. The villagers stare from behind cracked shutters. No one wants to be your friend here, and frankly, you don't blame them. Now, stealing horses that want to eat your face is one thing. Doing it without alerting their warlord owner is another. You creep through the high grass under cover of night. The stables are built like fortresses' thick timber walls, iron bolts. The faint scent of blood and hay wafting through the slats. Inside you hear them, the mares. Their breathing is deep and ragged, like the air is too heavy for them. You peek through a crack in the wood and see eyes glowing, wild, rimmed with crimson. One gnaws on a femur, casual. You steel yourself and slip inside. Immediately you realize stealth was optimistic. One of the mares snorts, then lets out a scream. Yes, a hoarse scream, like metal tearing apart in a firestorm. The others join in, stamping, thrashing, eyes rolling. They've smelled you. You unhook the chains with shaking hands. Their massive beasts' hooves the size of dinner plates, muscles roped thick as vines. But weirdly enough, they don't attack. They just wait. Then you realize they're trained to respond to Diomedes alone. So you improvise. You gallop toward the palace. There he is, Diomedes lounging on a throne of bones, not metaphorical, sipping something red that's hopefully wine. His guards swarm at the sight of you, but you don't stop. You leap off the Mare, grab Diomedes by the collar, and well feed him to his own horses. It's dark. It's twisted. It's effective. With their master gone, the Mares quiet. Their frenzy lifts like fog. They blink at you, confused, docile. One nuzzles your shoulder like a puppy who's just remembered it was raised by wolves. You lead them away from the palace under a sky streaked with dawn. The villagers emerge dazed. Someone cheers. Someone else spits on the ground. You're not sure if it's a thank you or just Thracian manners. You guide the horses toward your ship, their hooves oddly delicate on the path, like they've just remembered their horses, and not nightmares on four legs. Did you know? Ancient sources disagree on whether the Mara-rays were actually fed human flesh or just metaphorically wild. Historians still debate if the cannibal detail was added for dramatic flair or if it reflected a deeper metaphor for Diomedes' rule. Either way, you're not testing that theory. As you board the ship, the Mara-rays surprisingly settle. No snapping. No screaming. Just four massive animals with murder in their DNA curled up like oversized lapdogs. One of your crew jokingly suggests starting a horse show. You give him a look that suggests you're too tired for sarcasm. The sea carries you onward. That's 11. Only one more to go. But it's the one you've been dreading. Because it's not a beast. It's not a thief. It's not even on this plane of existence. It's the underworld, and you're going in. You stare at the mouth of the underworld. It doesn't stare back, but it breathes slow, sulfuric exhales that curl out of the cave like the world's oldest sigh. The air tastes like burnt copper and forgotten promises. This is the entrance to Hades, tucked into the cliffs of Tannerum, where the Aegean laps against the rocks like it knows not to linger. No amount of lion skin or demigod status prepares you for this one. Your 12th labor to descend into the underworld and bring back Cerberus, the three-headed guardian of the dead, alive, unharmed, with no weapons, right? You take one last look at the living world, then you step inside. Instant darkness wraps around you like a damp wool cloak. Each footfall echoes like it doesn't want to go any further. Your only guide is instinct and an eerie, rhythmic dripping that might be water or might be something else entirely. After a while, you stop measuring time. Maybe it's been hours, maybe days. You reach the river Styx, black and motionless, a mirror that only reflects the parts of you you'd rather not see. Charon waits. He doesn't speak. He just looks at you, then down at your empty hands. No coin. You sigh and offer him something else. A tooth knocked loose by the Cyrenian hind. Remember that chase? He inspects it. Grunts. Waves you on. Apparently inflation hasn't hit the underworld yet. The ferry drifts forward, impossibly silent. The river banks ripple with shadows, some whisper, some weep, some just stare. You don't make eye contact. Never make eye contact. At the far shore, a shape waits, pale, hooded, regal in its stillness, Persephone. She studies you like a curious child might study a flame. You expect scorn. You get a slight nod instead. Hades isn't here. He rarely is when there's company. That's fine. You're not here to chat. She gestures and the doors open. Cerberus, massive, hulking, fur like iron filings. 3 heads that snarl in different pitches, harmonizing in blood-curdling fury. Chains slither across the stone floor, too weak to matter. He sees you. All of him sees you, and somehow you're still breathing. You remember what you've been told. No violence, just strength, just will. So you walk up to him. He growls a low rumble that might crack mountains. You growl back. One head barks. You bark louder. This continues for a while and honestly feels ridiculous. But you're committed. Then slowly Cerberus tilts one massive skull. The center head blinks, and you swear this is true. He sneezes. Somewhere above, Persephone chuckles. You lay your hand on his snout, warm, solid, terrifying, and then you lead him. You lead Cerberus through the underworld, across the Styx, past Charon, who is absolutely not paid enough for this, up the tunnel of shadows, and out into the light. Daylight hits the three heads at once. They squint. They sneeze again. Cerberus has seen a lot of things, but sunshine? Not high on the list. Your king, Eurystheus, is waiting. When he sees you walking up the hill with 3 angry dogs and 0 weapons, he dives headfirst into a giant urn. True story, well documented. You don't even gloat. You just exhale, because it's done. 12 labors. 12 impossible, soul-breaking, limb-snapping labors. You've wrestled lions, chased deer, cleaned divine poop, and descended into death itself. And you made it back with a drooling, triple-headed souvenir. Curious fact, ancient sources differ wildly on whether Cerberus was allowed to return to Hades afterward. Some say he stayed topside. Others say he was only borrowed and returned after terrifying a few neighbors. One theory suggests this entire labor was more symbolic a journey of death and rebirth for you, not the dog. Historians still debate which version is true. The horses, the belt, the birds, the boar, they all fade now into the tapestry of legend. And you've moved beyond hero. You've become something more. But don't worry. There's still plenty of story left, because while your labors are over, the dust barely settled, the scent of sulfur still clinging to your clothes like cheap cologne. Cerberus has been returned. Persephone made sure of that. No one keeps her pets for long. And Eurystheus, once more convinced of your divine resilience, has finally stopped hiding in that oversized urn. Though, to be fair, you did knock on it 3 times just to be sure he was still alive. You expect parades, trumpets, at the very least, a decent sandwich. But no, there's a silence. An eerie kind of hush that doesn't quite feel like celebration or peace. It feels more like the breath before something else begins. Because here's the thing. Finishing the 12 labors doesn't mean life goes back to normal. You've changed. Everyone can see it. You're not just a guy who strangled a lion or cleaned poop with a river anymore. You've been to the underworld. You've bargained with gods. You've stared down monsters that don't even have proper Wikipedia entries yet. And people don't know how to talk to someone like that. So you walk, for miles, through fields that once held your footprints, past rivers that remember your scent. The land recognizes you now, each tree bending just slightly, each breeze whispering like it knows what you've seen. But home doesn't feel like home. You reach Tyrans. There are familiar walls, familiar faces, yet the greetings are cautious, polite. Nobody says it out loud, but it's there in their eyes. You try to sleep. You dream of boars and lions and blood, of hooves pounding like war drums, of snakes hissing lullabies in your ears. You wake up in a cold sweat, lion skin tangled around you like a net. There's no monster to fight now, just time. And guilt. Ah, yes, guilt, the companion you picked up long before the Nemean lion, the one that's been riding shotgun ever since you lost your wife and children in that fit of madness. No amount of labors could erase that. The gods might forgive. You might even forgive yourself one day, but not today. Still, there's one tiny detail that catches your attention as you drift through the days like a ghost in your own story. People start talking about your deeds not like rumors, but like gospel. You hear kids playing Hercules in the Hydra with sticks and mud. You hear old men by the fire debating whether the stable cleansing was your cleverest feat or just dumb luck with river placement. For the record, it was both. Another swears you tamed Cerberus with belly rubs. You don't correct them, because the story isn't yours anymore. It belongs to them, to the world. That's the thing historians often miss. Heroes aren't just born, and they're not made either. They're remembered, and remembering is messy. It's here, amid this slow return to mortality, that a historian named Hercules starts compiling your tales. He gets most of them right, but he claims you used a golden bridle from Athena to capture the Cyrenian hind, which is hilarious, considering you nearly broke your legs chasing that thing barefoot across ice. Still, it's flattering, in a way, but you also begin to notice something else there's no next. You build things with your hands. You lift stones for the sake of lifting. You watch sunsets and try to convince yourself this is peace. And then one day you see a statue of yourself. It's terrible. Your jaw is too big, your muscles too cartoonishly defined, and you're somehow holding both a club and a sword, despite never using both at once. But people love it. A little boy touches the base of the statue and whispers, "He fought Hades." Historians still argue whether your labors were penance, punishment, or path to immortality. What they never debate, that you completed them all, and now you're just waiting. For what? You don't know yet, but you feel it, like a storm forming just beyond the mountains, because peace never lasts, and neither does the story. Learning to sleep in a bed instead of under stars, learning to be remembered and still be yourself. Historians still argue whether your labors were penance, punishment, or a path to immortality. What they never debate, that you completed them all. And now you're just waiting. For what? You don't know yet, but you feel it, like a storm forming just beyond the mountains. Because peace never lasts, and neither does the story. And sure enough, as twilight dips its toes across the sky, painting the clouds in bruised lavender and fading gold, a messenger appears. Not a god, not a ghost, just a wide-eyed runner with dust in his teeth and a scroll in his hand. Another task? You don't know yet, but the wind picks up, just slightly. It carries a scent you recognize. Not sulfur, not blood, change. And deep inside, where the lion's strength and the Hydra's bite once lived, something stirs again. Not dread, not fear, something closer to curiosity. Maybe you're not done after all. The scroll is crumpled and hastily sealed, like someone wasn't sure if they wanted to send it at all. You break the wax with a thumb and unfurl the parchment slowly, savoring the creak of dried papyrus. A name jumps out immediately, Stymphalian. Not a person, birds. Of course it's birds. The Stymphalian birds. You sigh louder than necessary, hoping the gods are listening. These aren't your average angry pigeons. They're carnivorous, metallic feathered nightmares nesting around Lake Stymphalus. Imagine a goose crossed with a dagger factory and the spite of a cat who hasn't been fed in 12 minutes. And guess what? They fly. Oh, and they shoot their feathers like arrows. Because of course they do. You head north. The journey takes days, but the terrain is mercifully flat for once. You pass olive groves where the trees whisper gossip in the wind, and shepherds offer you bread without recognizing your face, which is oddly nice. When you finally reach the lake, it's eerie, flat as glass, smells like rust and old feathers. Nothing chirps, no frogs, no insects, not even a lazy fish. Just silence and sky. You take one cautious step toward the edge, and that's when you hear it. Not a songbird's call, more like metal scraping against metal. You tilt your head, and the clouds shift. Above you, a swirling black mass, wings glinting like bronze blades, eyes like molten coins. They see you, and they don't hesitate. The birds dive as one, screaming like a banshee army. You dive behind a moss-covered boulder, just as a volley of sharp feathers explodes into the earth where your face was a second ago. Now, you could try to shoot them down with arrows, but you've done that. You're not auditioning for Olympus's next top archer. You need something different, something noisy. You remember Athena's gift bronze castanets, clanging instruments forged by Hephaestus himself. Subtle, not remotely. Effective? Let's find out. You crawl out from cover, take a deep breath, and smash the castanets together. C-L-A-N-G. The sound echoes across the lake like thunder in a tin can. The birds shriek in unison, scatter in confusion. Some spiral out of control. Others crash into one another midair. Clang, clang. Each beat sends them flailing into the trees, or dive-bombing the water in panic. You grin. It's like watching a bunch of drunk kites trying to navigate a wind tunnel. Within minutes, the flock breaks formation entirely, fleeing into the distance. The sky clears. You don't chase them. The labor was to drive them away, not to kill them. And honestly, you're not sure anyone could kill those things without accidentally raising the entire countryside. Bronze feathers and combustible egos? That's a bad combination. So you just sit there a moment, castanets still in your lap, breathing in the silence you earned. A fun fact? In later Roman adaptations, the birds were sometimes described as pets of Ares, god of war, because of course even his pets had murder issues. Some versions of the story say the birds were sacred to Artemis, which makes this whole ordeal feel like you may have just accidentally offended another god. Add it to the list. Historians still debate whether the Stymphalian birds were metaphors for raiding tribes, foreign invaders, or just the ancient Greek equivalent of, "We need a weird monster this week." Either way, they're gone, and the lake breathes again. You wonder if fish will return, if the frogs will croak again. But you're not here to monitor ecological recovery. You're already walking away. Your muscles ache, but your head feels clearer than it has in days. Sometimes a little chaos is good for the soul. You spot one of the bird's feathers lodged in a tree trunk. You tug it out carefully. It's heavy, almost like a dagger. You tuck it into your belt. Not for use, just as a reminder. Because not every enemy has to be slain. Sometimes scaring them off is enough. The scroll you receive this time is damp. The ink has run in places, like whoever sent it didn't expect it to survive the trip. You hold it closer to the light and squint. A name forms. The Cyrenian hind. You blink. A deer. You're being sent to capture a deer. You feel slightly insulted. You just fought a Hydra, a lion, birds made of kitchen knives, and now you're off to chase Bambi? But then you read the fine print. This isn't just any deer. The Cyrenian hind is sacred to Artemis, goddess of the hunt and all things. You don't mess with unless you enjoy being turned into a squirrel. It has golden antlers, hooves of bronze, and the speed of a divine whisper. Oh, and you're not supposed to harm it, just catch it. No traps, no nets, no tranquilizers. Right. You're starting to suspect these labors aren't really about cleaning your name. They're just the gods seeing how close they can push you to breaking without technically committing homicide. The hind lives in the hills near Mount Serenia, so that's where you go. It's colder there. Pines whisper over narrow paths, and every step crunches with frost. You move slow, quiet, because you see her almost immediately. She steps into a clearing like she owns the forest. And maybe she does. Golden antlers catch the sunlight, throwing sparks into the trees. Her hooves leave tiny dents in stone like soft taps from a chisel. She turns her head toward you, but doesn't bolt. Not yet. You breathe. Don't move. Then she flinches and she's gone. You chase. This isn't a sprint. It's a season. Days pass, then weeks. You follow her across rivers and ridges, through valleys full of wild thyme and star-thick skies. You start dreaming of hooves, of antlers, of waking up with your face in cold dirt, mumbling apologies to trees. Once you think you've lost her entirely, only to find fresh hoof prints the next morning beside your fire. It's like she's taunting you. And maybe she is. Some say Artemis herself blessed the hind with near-divine awareness. Historians have long argued over whether the deer represented something symbolic, elusiveness, divine favor, even guilt itself. What can't be caught, maybe shouldn't be, but you're stubborn. And finally, after what feels like an entire change of season, you catch her. At dawn, she's drinking from a stream. Steam rises from her back in the morning chill. You're careful, slow, and somehow, miraculously, your hands close around her neck. She tenses, but doesn't fight, like she's been waiting. You whisper soft apologies, promise no harm. Then you begin the long walk back. But halfway through the return, the trees part and there stands Artemis. Oh, great, she's exactly as terrifying as the legends. Sharp-eyed, moon-lit, absolutely not laughing. She demands to know why you've dared touch her sacred animal. You explain, it's a labor, it's a punishment. You didn't want this. You haven't hurt her. The goddess eyes you for a long time. Then, with a voice like frost and silk, she says, release her, now. Golden antlers vanishing between the shadows like the last star at sunrise. Artemis doesn't thank you, but she doesn't smite you either, which honestly feels like a win. She simply vanishes, and you're left alone on the trail with sore feet, an empty rope, and the distinct feeling you just passed a test you weren't meant to. Fun side note? Some versions say that you captured the hind only because Artemis allowed it, just to mess with the king who assigned your labors. You were a pawn in godly sibling rivalry. Another theory? The hind was meant to represent your own conscience, ever running, never caught. Either way, you walk on. Lighter. There's a peace to that forest now. A hush that feels less like danger and more like permission to rest. So you do, because for once, nobody's bleeding. And the only thing shining is the sun, not a sword. The break doesn't last. because naturally the next scroll shows up before your legs stop aching from the deer chase. And this time it smells weird, like wet dog and river mud had a child. Lovely. You open it and immediately regret doing so near your campfire. A puff of dust, or is that fur, drifts into the flames and makes them flicker green for a second. You read the message. The Erymanthian boar roams the forests near Mount Erymanthos. It's famous for its fury, stamina, and for reasons unknown, its dislike of anything wearing sandals. Some say the boar was born from the spilled rage of Ares himself, which tracks, considering it once chased an entire Spartan hunting party up a cliff. This isn't going to be a petting zoo situation. You head toward the mountain, the path growing steeper and more tangled with each step. The locals don't greet you. They just shut their doors when they hear where you're going. One old man even throws a turnip at your feet and mutters, "For the gods to identify your remains." Ominous way that means you're now the intruder. You hear it before you see it. A grunt, deep, rolling, wet with menace. Then the bushes explode, and the boar is there, huge, mottled with dried mud and ancient scars. Its eyes are small, red, and deeply offended by your entire existence. Its tusks curve like ivory lightning bolts, sharp enough to slice moonlight. You run. Because of course you do. This isn't a fight. Not yet. You scramble over roots and duck under branches as it chases you through the trees, snorting like a kettle from the underworld. The plan, if you can call it, that is to wear it out. You remember reading somewhere that boars can't climb, so you lure it uphill, higher and higher. Slippery slopes, narrow ridges. You nearly fall twice, and the boar just keeps coming, like a furry bulldozer with anger issues. Finally, near the summit, it slows, breath huffing, foam flecking its mouth. Then it charges one last time and you sidestep. It skids, loses footing, crashes into a snowdrift. You dive after it, yes, really ropes in hand, cursing the gods, the king, and whatever ancient prankster decided a pig would be a noble quest. But somehow you manage. You bind its legs, strap it to a sled, and now you have a 900-pound porcine problem to drag back down the mountain. During the descent, you learn things like boars can snore, and snow is not comfortable for the human tailbone. Also, if you tug the ropes wrong, the sled will spin and try to run you over. Good times, but eventually you reach the village again. People peek out. One faints. A child screams with joy. Someone offers you soup. You decline. You don't trust boar-adjacent cuisine right now. Interestingly, there's a little-known papyrus that describes this labor in much goofier terms. It claims the boar got drunk off fermented berries and accidentally knocked itself out before you even showed up. Historians still debate whether that version was a comedic reimagining or an early satirical meme. Still, you prefer your version. You earned every bruise. On your way to deliver the boar to King Eurystheus, you remember something odd. The last time you dragged a prize back, the king hid in a pot, like a literal jar. Historians actually found fragments that depict him popping the lid open with a ladle. You wonder if I'll do that again. Spoiler, he absolutely does. But this time you hold the boar up to the jar like it's a furry pinata and tell him it likes royal stew. He screams, falls deeper into the pot. You laugh. Maybe too loud, because this time it's funny. You've survived something ancient and feral. Again, and somehow you still smell mostly human, which is more than can be said for the boar. You don't even get a day off. The scroll arrives with the delicacy of a thrown shoe. No shimmering mist, no messenger owl. Just a clunk on your head while you're trying to enjoy what passes for soup. You open it. The ink looks angry. Probably written by someone who never got over the fact that you're still alive. Clean the Augean stables, and those cattle have been pooping continuously for over 30 years. 30 years without a single cleaning. You do the mental math and nearly faint. This isn't a chore. It's an ecosystem. Probably has its own weather system by now. Maybe even a few minor deities. When you arrive, you're hit by the smell before the sight. And the smell? It's like someone fermented old Jim's socks in minotaur breath, then set it on fire and doused it in despair. You try not to breathe through your nose, which is hard since your eyes are already watering. The stables themselves are massive. Miles of stone corridors, each packed with bovine royalty casually chewing hay and regarding you like a cleaning intern with delusions of grandeur. The king greets you with a smirk. You'll never manage it in a day. The walls of the stables. You pace like a frustrated architect with cow dung on your boots. And then you see it. There's a river nearby, 2, in fact. And with a few carefully placed demolitions, you smile. You redirect the rivers. Yes, you literally reroute water, like a demigod Bob the Builder. It takes planning, boulders, sweat, and more swearing than you'd admit in front of a temple priest. But by mid-afternoon, the first river crashes through the stables like a watery cavalry. The cows moo in protest. The king gasps, and the filth? Gone. Swept downstream into what will definitely become someone else's problem. Historical note: some scholars argue that the rivers in question were Alpheus and Peneus, 2 mighty waterways in their own right. Others insist Hercules bribed a hydrologist and staged the entire thing. Historians still argue over whether the feat was physical or symbolic of political purification. Meanwhile, you just appreciate the fact that you didn't have to touch anything. That night, as the last of the mud drains out and the air becomes vaguely breathable, you look at the king. He's not smiling anymore, which means you are. Also fun trivia. Ancient poets used this labor as a metaphor for political reform, like cleaning out corruption style. Apparently, cows are excellent metaphors when people are too scared to name names. Anyway, you nod to the river one last time, because today you didn't slay a beast. You defeated bureaucracy with flood damage, and honestly, it feels pretty great. You're barely dry from the river stunt when the next labor drops like a boulder onto your chest. Retrieve the Mares of Diomedes. Sounds innocent enough, like you're going to a countryside tea party where the Mares wear flower crowns and frolic in meadows. Maybe they neigh softly and let you braid their manes. Spoiler, they do not. These Mares are monstrous. Not metaphorically. Literally, they eat people. Yes, human-eating horses. Some say they breathe fire. Others say their eyes glow red like the embers of a dying forge. Most agree they have an appetite for flesh, preferably fresh, and they're completely uncontrollable, except by one man, Diomedes. Now, Diomedes isn't just a horse enthusiast. He's a Thracian king with a god complex and a sadistic hobby. He feeds his enemies to his horses, as in that's his thing. Some collect coins, others do pottery. Diomedes, cannibal horses. You head northeast, and the further you go, the quieter the villages become. People don't like to talk about Diomedes. It's like saying Voldemort, but with hooves. When you arrive at his stronghold, the landscape already looks off. The grass is sparse, the soil's acidic. Birds don't sing. You don't even hear bugs. It's just wind, distant snarls, and your own regret. Diomedes greets you personally. Of course he does. He's all ego and gold-plated nonsense. Come to feed my mares? He chuckles. You almost answer with a pun. Almost. But you're too busy staying alive. The horses are kept in an iron enclosure the size of a small fortress. You hear them before you see them. A sort of blood-curdling scream mixed with frantic stomping. You approach the gate and yep, fire breath confirmed. Either that or someone snuck in a flamethrower. They are massive, wild-eyed, and foaming at the mouth. One of them charges the gate just from the sight of you. The bars shake like they're made of bamboo. You start to think, maybe the Hydra wasn't so bad. Now here's the twist. You don't defeat these horses with strength. You defeat Diomedes. That's the trick. You wait for nightfall. You watch the guards. You make your move like a demigod ninja. And you drag Diomedes kicking, yelling, very much alive into the enclosure. The mares smell him instantly. You look away. There's a lot of screaming. Then, silence. Just breathing. Deep, calm breathing. The horses walk out of the enclosure on their own, docile as kittens. Okay, murdered kittens, but still, you lead them without resistance. Apparently, they only respect dominance. Alpha energy. Whoever defeats Diomedes becomes their new master. You never thought your resume would include became leader of man-eating horses, but here we are. Fun fact, some sources say these horses were descended from the wind gods and could run faster than thought itself. Others say they were gifts from Ares and were bred specifically for war and carnage. Historians disagree wildly. Some even say the story was invented to explain how Hercules overthrew a cruel Thracian tyrant without mentioning any messy politics. Either way, you march the mares westward, and people flee ahead of you. Imagine seeing someone casually stroll by with a team of death horses in tow. That's you now. Your legend is getting weird. Also, side note, you try to feed them apples. They do not like apples. You settle for raw meat and an uncomfortable moral dilemma. Eventually, you turn them over to King Eurystheus. He takes one look at them and immediately sends them away. Some say they end up in Mount Olympus. Others say they're released into the wild and start a metal band. No one really knows, but you walk away, covered in ash. Hoof prints on your tunic. Slightly singed eyebrows. You've just tamed the most violent horses in mythology. You deserve a nap, but you won't get one, because there's a golden belt waiting for you, and an entire tribe of warrior women who are not thrilled about it. If the flesh-eating horses were madness, this next labor is pure tension, like walking into a room where everyone hates you. But they're too polite to say it out loud. You've been tasked with retrieving the belt of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. On paper, a diplomatic errand. In reality, it's a miracle you survive. Now, the Amazons. Let's pause and acknowledge them properly. They are not a myth, not entirely, at least. Archaeologists have found graves of warrior women on the Eurasian steppes, buried with their bows and armor. Some were taller than average, with signs of battle, wounds proof that the stories had roots in something real. Whether or not they rode horses backward while firing arrows, as one historian claimed with zero evidence, we'll never know. But one thing's certain, you're about to walk into a society of elite fighters, trained from birth and handpicked by the gods. And your job? Ask their queen for her sacred belt. Not a great icebreaker. The belt isn't just jewelry. It was a gift from Ares himself, said to grant strength, authority, and suspiciously excellent posture. Your journey takes you across the Aegean, your feet sticking to the deck, your stomach groaning with each wave. At least the sea air clears out the scent of flaming horses from your gear. When you arrive in the Missouri, capital of the Amazons, the atmosphere is tense. Think summer camp meets military base. Everyone's sculpted, no one smiles, and you're fairly certain 3 people are already measuring your skull for a trophy wall. But Hippolyta, she surprises you, tall, poised, and dressed in armor more elegant than anything you've seen. She actually listens. You explain the situation, why you need the belt, how this isn't about conquest, how you didn't even want to do this labor, but someone upstairs has an obsession with making your life absurd. And to your amazement, she agrees. Just like that. She gives you the belt. No tricks, no tests, no fight to the death. You're half convinced it's a setup. And it is, because just as you're packing up and preparing to leave, a boat arrives. Guess who? Hera, in disguise. Because, of course, she is. She whispers among the Amazons that you're here to kidnap their queen, that your kindness is a trick, that your true mission is to destroy them. Now imagine an entire island of warriors suddenly turning to you with spears raised. You're this close to escaping clean, and now you're surrounded by women who could out-sprint, out-shoot, and out-argue you without breaking a sweat. You try to explain, but it's chaos. Spears fly. Shields slam. You duck, roll, block. It's a blur of leather, bronze, and moral confusion. In the frenzy, Hippolyta is struck down, whether by mistake or as part of Hera's sabotage, no one knows. And it changes everything. Suddenly, it's not just a misunderstanding, it's war. You hate this. You hate that it came to this. But you fight your way to the belt, to safety, to the boat. You escape with the prize, and a sour taste in your mouth. Some say the real tragedy of this labor wasn't the death or the battle. It was the moment trust was offered, and it was shattered before it could root. Hippolyta had dignity. She saw reason, and it was stolen by gods playing games. Historians still debate this event. Did Hippolyta give the belt willingly? Did Hercules start the fight? Was this entire mission a cover for some deeper political maneuver? No one agrees, but you? You carry the belt, not with pride, with weight. You don't look back at the island. You don't celebrate this victory. You just hold the belt. And for once, it feels less like a trophy and more like a curse. You land back in Greece under a bruised sky, heart heavy, belt tucked away in a sack like it might bite you if you stare too long. You think, what's next? And then the wind whispers something foul. Cattle. of a certain monster, and you know you're not done suffering yet. Let's be honest, you thought the worst was over. You've wrangled man-eating birds, tamed wild bulls, and emotionally survived a very awkward misunderstanding with an entire nation of warrior women. But now, your new assignment takes you even farther beyond the edges of the map, across deserts that stretch like overbaked flatbread to the far reaches of the known world. Your task? Steal the red cattle of Geryon. Sounds simple, right? Just a cowboy job. A herd to round up. But no, this is Hercules' version of a cattle drive, which of course involves a three-bodied giant, a two-headed dog, and a golden sword-wielding herdsman who moonlights as a professional menace. First off, Geryon, he's not your average giant. He's got 3 torsos, 3 heads, and 6 arms, all stacked like an eldritch totem pole. Fashion-wise, he's somewhere between Nightmare's Roman statue and Nightmare Fuel K-pop backup dancer. And his cattle? Oh, they're divine. Literally, their coats shimmer like spilled wine on marble. Sacred, radiant, and fiercely guarded on the island of Erythea, which is basically Atlantis' grumpy cousin. But before you even reach Geryon, the journey tests your will. You trek westward, crossing the Libyan desert, the heat so thick it clings to your lungs like honey. Your sandals melt. Your water turns to steam in the flask. You begin to hallucinate at one point. You think a rock is your uncle. You wave to it. It doesn't wave back. At the edge of the world, the sun glares like a god with something to prove. You get fed up and literally shoot an arrow at it. Yes, at the sun. And here's the best part, it works. Helios, the sun god himself, is so amused and possibly mildly concerned that he offers you his golden cup, not like a goblet, a literal boat-shaped flying cup that he uses to ferry himself across the sky. You climb into it and sail across the ocean in a solar Uber. This might be the most unhinged moment of your journey, and that's saying something. When you arrive at Erythea, you're greeted not by Geryon, but by his watchdog Orthrus. 2 heads, twice the teeth. You've barely touched land when it lunges at you like an overexcited blender. You take it out with your club in a single blow. Then comes Evertium, the herdsman, another one of Ares' sons, because apparently nepotism is thriving in the divine realms. He swings a blade, shouts something dramatic, and you respond by tossing him across the pasture like a javelin. Finally, Geryon appears. 3 heads, 3 voices, 6 arms carrying a spear, a sword, and a giant shield made from what you think might be old temple doors. This is less of a duel and more like fighting a group project that decided to merge into one extremely angry unit. You circle each other. Sand kicks up in spirals. One of his heads sings something unsettling. The others growl. You lunge, he blocks. You feint left, swing right, and miracle of miracles, you manage to catch him off guard. He falls. The earth groans beneath the weight of his body. And the cattle, they do not care. They just chew grass. One of them sneezes. Another one looks at you like you've interrupted a particularly good nap. It takes weeks to herd them. They wander, they bolt. One of them escapes and swims across a bay like an Olympian with 4 stomachs. At one point you fall asleep and wake up to find them rearranged into what looks like a sarcastic spiral formation, as if to mock your sleep schedule. On the way home, the gods try to mess with you. Hera sends gadflies to sting the cattle into a panic. A river floods your path. A random bandit tries to ransom one of the bulls. At this point, you've lost count of the number of things trying to derail your labors. But you don't stop. You haul the herd across Europe, pushing them uphill, through forests, over craggy mountain passes. At night, you wrap yourself in a shaggy cloak made from Gerion's fur-lined cape practical, and a little creepy, but mostly warm. One by one, the red cattle shuffle into King Eurystheus's pens. You hand them off, no ceremony, no thanks. Just a grunt from the king and another scribble on his list. Historians argue about the symbolic meaning of this labor. Was it a metaphor for conquering the known world? A show of dominion over chaos? Or just a reason to put Hercules in another weird fight he didn't ask for? No consensus. But one thing's sure, the journey changes you. You've been to the ends of the earth and come back with blisters, a sunburn, and the vague sense that gods find your pain extremely entertaining. And as you rest, one leg twitching from all the walking, you hear your next challenge. Retrieve the golden apples from the garden of the Hesperides. Sounds poetic, right? A gentle stroll into a mythical orchard, pick a few shiny fruits, head home, maybe bake a pie. But this is you, and things are never that simple. The garden is somewhere in the far west, beyond even where you fought Geryon. It's guarded by nymphs, protected by the earth herself, and oh yeah, watched over by a 100-headed dragon named Ladin who doesn't sleep, ever. Let's not even start on what happens if you bruise one of the apples. To get there, you do something ancient heroes were surprisingly good at. You ask for directions, which is how you end up in a wrestling match with Nereus, the shape-shifting sea god. Nereus is wise, slippery, and constantly turning into different animals mid-conversation. 1 second he's a lion, then a fish, then a ball of fire. You hold on like your life depends on it, because it kind of does. Eventually he gives up and tells you the way to the garden. It's not even in this world. The garden of the Hesperides is a divine place at the edge of the earth, sometimes even said to exist in the heavens. Scholars still argue over whether it's symbolic of paradise, or just the ancient Greek version of 404, location not found, because talking trees are rare and sensitive. And then, there he is, Atlas himself. Yes, that Atlas, the titan condemned to hold up the sky on his shoulders like a divine coat rack. He's massive, older than any living king, shoulders wider than most temples. He looks at you like you're the 100th person to interrupt his shift. And here's where your brain does something clever. You ask at last to fetch the apples for you. See, his daughters, the Hesperides, are the ones guarding the orchard. He has family access, and you offer to hold up the sky while he pops over for a quick celestial errand. Surprisingly, he agrees. You step in beneath the heavens, and instantly your back feels like someone dropped Mount Olympus on it. The sky is heavy, crushing, endless. You feel your knees buckle. Your spine whimpers. Atlas returns 3 golden apples in his massive hands. They're radiant, glowing, they hum with divine energy. Your job is done. But then he smirks. Oh, you know, he says, probably cracking his massive knuckles, I'll just take these back to Eurystheus myself. You go ahead and keep holding the sky. The betrayal is subtle, but powerful. Now, you may not be a genius, but you're clever enough to feign agreement. Sure, you say, but can you just take the sky again for a second while I adjust my cloak? This lion's skin is bunching up under all the cosmic weight. Historians still debate whether this tale shows your cunning, or whether Atlas was just tired from holding up the universe for eternity. Either way, you've got the apples. You head home, careful not to take any bites, they're sacred after all, tied to Hera, and possibly containing secrets of immortality. Some scholars think these apples may have inspired later myths, like the apple in the Garden of Eden. Others think ancient storytellers just really liked shiny things. You present the golden apples to Eurystheus, who does not touch them. He knows better. Hera wants them back in her garden, so you return them, because when a goddess says, "Put that back," you put that back. But tonight, as you stretch out by the fire, muscles aching, your mind whirling, one thought lingers. Outwitted trickster titans, wrestled sea gods, and cleaned a dung-stained river with your bare hands and some creative irrigation. But now your last task is the most absurdly ambitious of all, and come back alive. There are horror movies with gentler plot lines, but as usual you don't hesitate, or at least not outwardly. Inside you're screaming, but heroes don't get to back out. Besides, it's not the first time you've flirted with death. You've just never actually been to his house. You make your way to Eleusis, a city deeply connected to mysteries and the afterlife. It's where you undergo the sacred Eleusinian rites, a ceremonial cleansing to protect your soul before stepping into Hades. That's right, there's a pre-check system for the Underworld TSA, but for ghosts. Here's your fun fact. The Eleusinian mysteries were so secretive that even today, historians still argue about what actually happened during them. Some say they involved visions, others hallucinogens, others symbolic rebirth. Whatever it is, you leave changed and ready to die. Literally. Your descent begins at Tanarum, a cave in the Peloponnese believed to be an entrance to the underworld. The air there is heavy, like it's soaked in centuries of grief. As you step inside, the world shifts. Shadows deepen. Time bends. Your breath becomes visible. Even though it's summer outside, you're not alone. The dead are everywhere. They don't speak, but they see you. Some remember your name. A few recognize the lion's skin. Others just stare. It's like walking through a fog of memory, filled with regrets that cling to your ankles like seaweed. And then comes Charon, the skeletal ferryman of souls, standing in his creaky boat on the river Styx. You don't have a coin for him, but you do have something better reputation. You're Hercules, son of Zeus, the man who once held up the sky and didn't complain about back pain. Charon gestures silently. You step aboard. The journey across the Styx is slow, silent, and absolutely not scenic. You pass screaming souls trapped in the water, eternally reaching for a shore they'll never reach. One of them even looks like he's doing the backstroke. You don't ask. On the other side, you meet Hades himself. Now, you might expect a grim-fanged king with a lava throne and a pet volcano. But Hades, he's calm, regal, polished, a little tired. Think less evil overlord and more guy who's managed a bureaucratic office for a few millennia and is just done. Instead, he gives you a condition. You can take Cerberus only if you subdue him without weapons. No sword, no club, no trick arrows. Just your hands, your strength and nerves of iron. You agree. Not that you have a choice. Cerberus is massive. taller than a war elephant with 3 snarling heads, each with a personality, one furious, one curious, and one just deeply disappointed in you. His fur is matted with centuries of ash, and his eyes glow like forgotten embers. You wait until he charges, and then you do what you do best. You wrestle. It's brutal. Cerberus bites, claws, thrashes. His breath smells like brimstone and expired dreams. At one point, one head sneezes in your face. You power through. You wrap your arms around his serpentine necks. You dig in your heels against the stony ground of the underworld. Your muscles scream. Your spine makes a noise like old furniture. Eventually, somehow, you overpower him. Cerberus pants, defeated but alive, and you give him a scratch behind the ear. The curious head actually likes it. And so, with the giant beast in tow, you climb your way back to the surface. Above ground, people run at the sight of you. You don't blame them. You're walking up from the underworld dragging a 3-headed demon dog like it's your slightly misbehaving pet. You arrive at Eurystheus' palace. The king takes one look at Cerberus, screams like a toddler, and hides in a storage jar. Again. Then comes the weirdest twist of all. You take Cerberus back, because that's the deal. You don't kill him. You don't chain him up in a cage. You return him to his post in the underworld. As you walk him back to Tanarum, the curious head nuzzles your shoulder. You smile just a little. Cerberus, it turns out, is just doing his job too. And when you finally emerge for the last time, it's over. 12 labors, 12 impossible quests. And somehow, you're still standing. You thought you'd feel different, crossing the threshold into freedom after the 12th labor. Maybe angels would sing, maybe your skin would glow like freshly waxed marble, but nope, you're just tired and hungry again. Eurystheus naturally takes credit for your success. Publicly, he acts like he personally tamed Cerberus while juggling flaming scrolls. But in private, he knows. The whole kingdom knows. Word spreads fast when you casually return from the underworld with all your limbs and none of your sanity missing. Still, you don't get a feast. No parade. Just a polite nod from the gods and a quiet dismissal from the man who's bossed you around for years. Classic management behavior. And so, for the first time, what feels like forever, you get to decide where to go next. No cursed kings. No divine punishments. Just freedom. You find yourself back in Tyrans, the city that watched your rise and ruin. It's both familiar and alien. The streets are smaller than you remember. People look at you like you're a legend who accidentally walked into the wrong century. You take a moment, breathe. The air doesn't smell like blood or fire, just olives and dust. Remember that little-known fact? Despite all his divine heritage, Hercules spent most of his mortal life seeking approval from Eurystheus, from Hera, from the people. He was constantly proving himself as if each monster slain might finally earn him peace. You're starting to understand that. Not that peace is coming anytime soon, because what the myths don't always say out loud is that your story doesn't stop with the 12th labor. No. This is ancient Greece. They don't believe in happy endings, just dramatic sequels. In fact, just a few weeks after Cerberus, you receive an invitation, a royal one. King Deianira of Calydon has a daughter. Beautiful, of course, strong-willed, and somehow also named Deianira. Naming conventions were a little lazy back then. He cycles through several forms like he's auditioning for an avant-garde water ballet. First, he becomes a man with the voice of thunder. You dodge his punches. Then, a massive serpent. You wrestle it like you're trying to twist a hose possessed by Satan. Finally, he turns into a bull. Because why not? You grab him by the horns, literally, and slam him into the mud. When you snap off one of his horns, it becomes the cornucopia, the horn of plenty, filled with fruit, flowers, and minor tax exemptions. Okay, maybe not that last part. Deianira is impressed. You win her hand. But here's your academic debate moment. Some versions of the myth suggest she chose you before the fight even started. Others claim she secretly hoped you'd lose so she could avoid marrying anyone. Historians still argue about her motives, as if ancient Greek women weren't allowed to have complex feelings. Either way, you marry her. And for a moment, just a flicker of divine mercy, it seems like you might finally get that normal life. You settle in Caledon. No monsters. No missions. You even try hobbies. Gardening. Bird watching. Saying no to quests. You start growing a beard not because it makes you look tough, but because shaving every day is for demigods with something to prove. But of course, peace never lasts. One day you're traveling with Deianira, and you come to a river swollen with spring rains. There's no bridge, and she can't swim across. You're about to carry her when a centaur named Nessus appears. He offers to ferry her on his back, and you, ever the practical guy, say sure. What's the worst that could happen? Spoiler, everything. Midway across, Nessus grabs her and tries to run off. Classic centaur behavior. You grab your bow, still tipped with the blood of the Hydra, and shoot him through the spine. Nailed it. As he lies dying, Nessus pulls a final trick. He whispers to Deianira, "Take some of my blood. It's a love potion. If Hercules ever strays, this will bring him back to you." Even menstrual blood. Romance was not subtle back then. Back in Caledon, things calm again. Sort of. You train warriors, teach the youth, get mildly obsessed with olive oil varieties. But in your wife's mind, that tiny bottle of centaur blood waits like a ticking bomb. And you? You're still chasing something you can't quite name. Maybe peace, maybe purpose, maybe just a chance to be without having to prove. The years pass, and somehow you become a kind of local legend/dad figure. Kids ask you to tell the story of the Nemean lion at dinner time. Merchants give you olives on the house, though you suspect it's just a polite way to avoid you haggling. You're not complaining, but there's something uneasy behind your smile. A restlessness, like your muscles remember swinging a club more than they remember picking grapes. And then, inevitably, someone comes knocking. It's King Eurytus of Oechalia this time. He's offering his daughter Iole to whoever can beat him and his sons in an archery contest. The old win the princess with a few well-placed arrows game. You've played worse. So you show up, bow in hand, and knock every target clean off the stand. Bullseye, bullseye, bullseye. You even shoot one through a ring midder while chewing on a fig, just because you can. Iole is impressed, but Eurytus? Not so much. He remembers stories of your rages, your past sins, the madness that once drove you to tragedy. And even though he made the offer, he goes back on his word. says you're unfit for marriage, says his daughter deserves someone with a stable emotional portfolio. You don't argue. You leave quietly, and that silence, it eats at you. Historians still argue whether this was the real breaking point. Some say Hercules' pride was too wounded to walk away. Others believe the gods meddled again, nudging you toward a fate darker than anything you've faced. Either way, something inside you snaps. You return later with fire in your chest. And this time you don't bring a bow. You bring fury. You sack the city of Oechalia, burn it to the ground, kill Eurytus and his sons. You take Iole with you, but not as a bride, not yet. Just as someone rescued from the wreckage of her father's cruelty. Or so you tell yourself. When you return home to Deianira, she sees you with the young, beautiful Iole trailing behind like an omen. She smiles, nods, says nothing. But that bottle of Nessus's blood, remember that? Yeah, she remembers it too. She soaks one of your tunics in it. Not out of spite, out of fear, desperation. She just wants to hold on to what little remains of your shared life, to stop you from drifting into myth and leaving her behind in the dust of your legend. You put on the tunic, it clings like wet wool, and then the burning begins, not like fire, not even like acid, more like every nerve in your body decides to scream at once, a chorus of agony that won't stop. You claw at your skin, trying to tear the fabric off, but the blood of the Hydra, still potent from your second labor, is binding it to you like a curse. The pain? Unimaginable. You stumble into the woods. No one dares stop you. Your footsteps melt the grass. You scream your name into the sky, not so the gods can hear you, but so you can remember who you are through the pain. And now here's a strange historical detail. Some ancient Greeks believed your death mirrored the purification rituals of heroes becoming gods. The fire, the agony, it wasn't just punishment. It was transformation. Back at the palace, Deianira realizes what she's done. She didn't know Nessus had tricked her. Didn't know the blood was poison. In despair, she takes her own life. You're left crawling up Mount Ota, the wind slicing through you like knives made of ice and memory. You build your own funeral pyre. Because of course you do. No one else is strong enough to carry you. No one else would dare, but no one lights it. So you call out one final time. A stranger steps forward. Philoctetes, a young shepherd or hunter, depending on the version. He agrees to light the flame. You hand him your bow and arrows as a reward. Those same arrows still coated in the Hydra's blood. Remember that they'll matter later in a completely different myth. And then the flames rise. They lick at your feet, your legs, your chest. You don't scream, you look up. And then, in one of the most debated moments in mythology, your mortal body burns away, but your divine essence is lifted into the stars. Some say Zeus sent a thunderbolt to claim you. Others believe Athena herself guided your soul. Either way, you ascend to Olympus, and just like that, you are no longer a man. You are a god. So now you rise. Not in the dramatic, fiery way one might expect from a Hollywood blockbuster, but like a gentle pull upward, a slow unfurling of weight from your limbs. Your muscles no longer ache. Your skin, once seared and blistered, now glows faintly like polished marble under moonlight. Welcome to Olympus. You expect golden gates, trumpets, maybe a choreographed dance number. What you get is a kind of strange, floaty quiet. A breeze that smells like ambrosia and thunderstorms. Clouds beneath your feet that feel like silk bedsheets left out in the sun. And gods. So many gods they don't rush to greet you. You're not sure if it's shyness or politics. But you spot familiar faces. Athena gives you the smallest nod. Hermes offers a wink. Dionysus raises a cup and mumbles something about finally getting backup for the party planning committee. You don't argue. You're offered a throne. Not as large as Zeus's, not as sleek as Apollo's, but solid, simple, and positioned right between Hebe, goddess of youth, sweet smile, very into you, and Ares, who is already glaring at you like you're about to steal his lunch money. It's awkward, sure, but in a family dinner with people you've only seen on ancient pottery kind of way. And speaking of family, here comes Hera. Now, if you thought she'd throw a goblet of nectar in your face, you're not alone. Most myths set her up as your eternal enemy. But up here, in Olympus, grudges age like wine. And Hera, she's had time to think. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's political optics. Maybe she's just tired of Zeus bringing up your name every time he brags about his offspring. She smiles, offers you a wreath of olive leaves. It's not an apology. It's something weirder, acceptance. And then, in a surprise move that historians still debate, some say it's allegory. Others think it's symbolic marriage diplomacy. You marry Hebe, Hera's daughter. Yep, the goddess of eternal youth. She's kind, lovely, and pours your wine without judging how much you drink. Honestly, not a bad arrangement. You settle into godhood faster than expected. You take over the domain of strength and protection, becoming the go-to deity for athletes, warriors, and that one guy trying to lift a cart off his goat. Temples rise in your name. Statues, too, always with overly defined calves and questionable loincloths. You find Olympus surprisingly mundane at times. The gods bicker. Apollo gets moody about lyre contests. Artemis keeps bringing wounded animals into the halls. Even Hephaestus once set the drapes on fire while testing new inventions. It's divine, yes, but not perfect. You start visiting the mortal world in disguise, helping where you can, teaching boys how to wrestle without breaking their backs, giving farmers better ways to carry stone. You even stop a war or two before they start, though Ares hates when you do that. One day a group of kids builds a crude statue of you out of clay and river reeds. You sneak down just to stand beside it. They don't recognize you, of course, but one of them pats the statue and says, "This guy? He's strong but not mean. Like my dad, but cooler. But if clouds get a little misty that day, blame the humidity." Here's a weird bit scholars love to argue about. Some say your Olympian presence is split one part immortal, seated beside Zeus, and one part still lingering in the stars as the constellation Hercules. It's like having both a celestial LinkedIn profile and an Instagram for mortals to follow. Others say you were absorbed into Hercules Alexikakos, a later title meaning Hercules, the averter of evil, worshipped during plagues and invasions. Apparently, being a demigod with trauma made you the ideal spiritual bouncer. But for you, none of that matters as much as the quiet, the weightlessness of no longer needing to prove yourself. No more lions to strangle. No more labors to complete. No more oaths to kings with fragile egos and too many sandals. Just you, your strength, your peace, and Hebe, pouring you another drink, smiling like she knows every story you've ever lived. You lean back on your throne. The stars blink above and below. And for the first time in a long time, you just breathe. You don't dream anymore. Not like mortals do, with scrambled faces and awkward high school flashbacks. Your mind, now seated among the divine, moves through memory like a smooth river clear, unbroken and very occasionally interrupted by Dionysus, asking if you've seen his sandals. But one memory returns more than the others, the apples of the Hesperides. You remember the glint of those golden fruits, the sly smiles of the nymphs, and the weight of the sky on your shoulders, literal and metaphorical. It was the moment you stopped just being strong and started being clever. And that cleverness, well, you've learned it matters just as much up here. Olympus, for all its glory, is a place of games. Not the athletic kind, although Hermes does organize weekly foot races just to make everyone feel bad. No, these are the games of favor, influence, whispered alliances, and immortal gossip. It's like a divine high school where everyone has superpowers and passive aggression is an Olympic sport. You don't play these games well. At first, because, let's face it, you were raised to punch monsters, not navigate the politics of eternal brunches and passive-aggressive toga compliments. But then you start to learn. You spend time with Athena, not just to borrow wisdom, the way mortals pray for it, but really learn it. She teaches you the value of timing, restraint, and chess metaphors. You realize that sometimes the best way to win is to make the other gods think they're winning. You speak with Hestia, the goddess of the hearth, one of the quietest deities, but perhaps the wisest. She tells you that gods are like fire, beautiful when contained, destructive when ignored. Her temple never grows flashy, but it is everywhere, reminder that warmth matters more than spectacle. You begin using your reputation not just to lift weights or wrestle river spirits, but to broker peace between rivals. You help Poseidon and Athena divide coastal shrines without flooding anyone's goat farms. You suggest to Apollo that maybe his daily sun route could use a little flare cue, the sparkly sky chariot decals, which he absolutely adores. You're becoming a diplomat, a surprisingly effective one. And while that sounds like a weird left turn in a hero's journey, consider this. You've already done the impossible. You've carried a god's weight, outwitted Atlas, faced your own madness. Now you're building something lasting, a legacy. There's a myth less famous than your lion-wearing escapades that says mortals would one day call on you not just for strength, but for justice. That judges in Roman courts would swear by your name. That emperors would claim to descend from you, not for your muscles, but for your sense of order. That's right, order, from you. Historians still debate whether this was a posthumous PR campaign or the result of some very effective cult worship, but the evidence remains. Hercules, once a wild card, becomes Hercules the lawgiver in some late texts. A god who brings balance, not just biceps. It's weird, sure, but then again, isn't all of Olympus? One evening, as you're watching the stars scatter like spilled salt across the sky, you feel something tugging at you. Not physically, your godly body doesn't get tugged. More like a ripple in your awareness, like a distant prayer spoken not in panic, but in reverence you focus. And there, in a dim corner of the mortal world, a child stands alone in a temple. There's no priest, no incense, just a homemade altar of stacked stones and a simple offering, a cracked toy spear, clearly loved too much. He doesn't ask for strength. He doesn't beg for riches. He just says, "Help me protect my sister." Somewhere in the cosmos, your name is whispered, not with awe, but with comfort. You've become something greater than heroic. You've become safe. Not safe like bubble wrap and hand sanitizer, but safe like the strong arms you can fall into when the world gets heavy. You're the myth whispered to children when they feel alone. The shape in the stars that says, you can be brave too, but their bloodline carries on. Kings, warriors, thinkers, not all of them glorious, but all of them touched by your legacy. One of them builds a statue of you so large that it's listed as one of the 7 wonders of the world. Yep, that's the statue of Zeus at Olympia, but guess who it's modeled after? You, your jawline, your pose, your thunderous energy. They slapped Zeus's name on it. But historians still debate whether it's really you beneath all that gold plating. You don't mind. You're a god now. And gods, if nothing else, learn to be patient. You visit the underworld. Because of course you do. You've been there before dragging Cerberus up a long, echoing path, while covered in sweat, wounds, and more curses than a sailor in rush-hour traffic. But this time, you walk in without resistance, no mission, no battle, just curiosity, and maybe, if you're honest, a little guilt. The air down here doesn't feel like wind. It feels like breath held too long, like waiting. Hades greets you with a nod, not a warm one. He's not the type, but he respects you. How many can say they borrowed his dog and returned it mostly unharmed? Back again? He asks. Voice like shifting stones. You nod. There's something you need to see. It takes time, but eventually you find the soul you're looking for. Megra. She looks the same as you remember. Maybe a little softer around the edges, as all shades become. But still herself, still kind, still glowing faintly in this colorless place. She smiles when she sees you. Not a surprise, not a gasp, just a quiet, knowing smile, like she expected you eventually. You don't speak much. Words are weighty in the land of the dead. They echo for centuries if you're not careful. But you feel everything. She forgives you, not with some grand declaration, just with her presence. It's more than you deserve, but you take it with the humility of a man who once mistook wine for blood. You tell her you still think of her, that her children are remembered, and that you became something better, something steadier. Before she fades, she places a ghostly hand over your heart. That night, when you return to Olympus, something changes in the way you carry yourself. A bit lighter, a bit slower, like a man finally allowed to exhale. Historians still debate if your tale with Megra was one of tragedy or redemption. The myth shifts, depending on who's telling it. Some say it was doomed from the start. Others say it was the making of your soul. The truth, as usual, lives somewhere in between. But you don't argue. You just look toward the stars and keep walking. Later, you build something. Not a temple, though several spring up in your name. Not a city, though there are more than a few called Heraclean. No, what you build is quieter. A school. hidden in a valley few gods bother to visit. You start training mortals, not to fight monsters, but to control their strength, their anger, their purpose. It's like a gym, a dojo, and a library all in one. There are goats. Of course there are goats. One of your first students is a scrawny farm girl who wants to learn how to defend her village. Another is a former soldier with shaky hands and a haunted look. You don't teach them to crush skulls, you teach them why not to, and it catches on. Years later, the valley becomes a legend. They call it the Grove of the Lion, after the pelt you leave draped over the front gate. Some say the grove heals people. Others say it gives them nightmares. Either way, they leave changed. You visit in secret every few decades, just to watch. Just to sit among the olive trees and let the cicadas sing their endless summer lullabies. It's funny, after everything, you find peace not in battle, not in revenge, not even in love, but in teaching. Who saw that coming? Definitely not you. Now, remember that boy with the toy spear from a few sections ago? He grows up. He becomes a guardian of a remote temple and leads a life so humble it's almost invisible to the world. But one night his village is attacked, and in that chaos he remembers the warmth, the wind, and the God who never answered with thunder, only with presence. He holds off the raiders long enough for the children to escape, and though he falls, the story spreads. They call him Hercules, the little Hercules. People argue for centuries whether he actually existed, whether he was a myth or just an echo of your name, but none of that matters to you, because on a soft summer breeze drifting through Olympus you hear a prayer. Not for power, not for vengeance, just help me be brave like him. You don't feel the urge to leap into action, because now there's nothing to fight. You've done it. 12 labors, countless side quests, a few emotional breakdowns, and one very awkward lion skin wardrobe that, let's be honest, was never fashionable. No matter how many demigods wore it after you. You lean back, resting your head on the folded pelt of the Nemean lion. It still smells faintly of pride and regret. You let the wind comb through your hair, already silvering with time. Today is not about battle. It's about memory. You think of your mother, Alcmene, whose name barely made it into the poems. She who raised you without fanfare, hiding her strength in silence. They always talked about Zeus, the mighty father, but they forgot who kept you fed, who held your fevered head, who whispered you're more than his blood. You remember Chiron, too, the centaur tutor whose arrows never missed and whose lessons cut deeper than any blade. He taught you to read not just books, but people. Even monsters, he once said, were children once. A chill settles over the stones, not unpleasant, just grounding, like the hand of time pressing gently on your shoulder. You think of your children, not the ones from legend, but the ones you met during travels, students, orphans, soldiers, strangers, people who looked at you, not with awe, but with need. And you tried. God, you really tried. Not every effort worked. One boy turned at piracy. One girl vanished into the wilds of Thrace. But one of them, one became a healer, known across 5 kingdoms. She says it was your story that made her believe she could tame pain instead of cause it. You grin. You'll take that legacy. Far below, a caravan winds through a mountain pass. You recognize the sigil Athena's owl. They're likely on some diplomatic mission or philosophical exchange. Or maybe it's just a very over-prepared wedding party. With Greeks, you never know. You watch their torches flicker like fireflies, and you wonder what stories they tell about you now. That's the thing about myths. They grow like ivy. You plant one seed, and centuries later, someone's weaving it into a crown. You've been called a monster, a savior, a drunk, a king, a slave, a storm. But up here, in this quiet twilight, or why does ambrosia taste suspiciously like honeyed goat cheese? One of those questions, at least, might have a practical answer. Historians still debate whether the ambrosia of the gods was a metaphor, a mistranslation, or just an early Mediterranean snack. Some even argue it was a psychedelic part of sacred rituals lost to time. You never needed it. You found your immortality elsewhere, in the way children carve your name into tree trunks, in songs sung by sailors off Crete, in the whispered prayers before battles long after your bones became legend. As darkness settles, stars emerge one by one like shy ideas tiptoeing into the room. You don't sleep, not really, but you rest, eyes half closed, breathing slow, thoughts draped like linen across the line between memory and dream. In the hush, you think of labors 1 through 12, not as triumphs, but as thresholds, each monster a mirror, each task a peeling back of the self until something raw and luminous remained. Hera no longer torments you, not because she forgot, but because she's tired too. Even wrath needs rest. You're no longer afraid of her, no longer afraid of yourself. Tomorrow you'll walk again, maybe down the hill into that little fishing village with excellent olives, maybe across the Aegean, just to feel the sea beneath you. Maybe nowhere at all, just one step forward, then another. But tonight you sit still, and the world turns gently without you. The stars are bright tonight, brighter than they've been in a long time. Not the polished shine of Olympus, but the kind of quiet shimmer that humbles you. Somewhere far above, constellations trace your outline whether you like it or not. A lion here, a Hydra there, even that embarrassing bit where you wore a giant crab as a scarf. You're a bedtime story now, and yet here you are, still walking, still breathing. The wind carries the smell of olives and the distant laughter of mortals. Below the ridge there's a humble feast happening. Someone's wedding, maybe, or just a Tuesday in a village where wine outlives grudges. You hear a flute. Someone claps out of rhythm. A goat bleats dramatically, possibly in protest of the dancing. You smile. They don't know you're watching, that the man they call Hercules once trudged through their fields, dragging the sky on his shoulders like a glorified coat rack. Yes, you remember that day. Atlas, with his terrible posture and even worse attitude, handed you the cosmos like it was a slightly overripe melon. For a moment you understood what it meant to be a god burdened by eternity, heavy with indifference. Then, like any good problem solver, you tricked your way out of it. Classic you. Historians still argue about that one. Some say you held the sky out of pure strength. Others claim it was symbolic, a metaphor for responsibility. A few fringe scholars even suggest it was a weather-related hallucination caused by high-altitude bread mold. You don't correct them. Let them guess. That's the freedom of becoming myth. People can debate your truth forever, but only you know what the stars felt like in your palms. You rise, stretching out the knots in your back. The lion pelt slips from your shoulder like a lazy cat. You think maybe tomorrow you'll finally wash it. It's starting to smell less like courage and more like gym socks and wet history. A small owl lands on a rock nearby. You blink. It blinks back, suspiciously intelligent. Athena's always watching, isn't she? You nod to the bird, half expecting it to roll its eyes. It doesn't, but it also doesn't leave. It just stays there, like an audience of one. You don't speak, but you think she understands anyway. You begin to walk, not to escape, not to arrive, just to move. Your feet find the old marble road, overgrown and cracked, but still nobler than dirt. It leads nowhere in particular, but that's the point. You pass ancient trees with bark like folded maps, olive groves that whisper family secrets in the breeze, stones carved with forgotten prayers, some crude, some elegant, all earnest. One reads, "You think about the people who told you it would never be enough." Eurystheus, for one that soft-chinned king who made your life a bureaucratic nightmare wrapped in a divine dare. 12 impossible tasks, and still he whined like a child denied dessert. You suspect he spent more time polishing his goblet than ruling his kingdom, and yet you owe him. Without those labors, you'd be just another strongman with family drama. He made you a legend. Even if he did cry the first time he saw the boar, you pass a fig tree blooming out of season. You remember Megara, not the tragedy, not tonight. You remember her laugh, the way she scolded you for lifting furniture instead of just moving it like a normal person. You remember how she braided your hair when it got too long, muttering that heroes should look presentable. She didn't need you to be strong, just kind. You think maybe you were once. Up ahead, a shepherd's fire glows like an ember in the dark. You don't approach. You just watch from a distance as the man hums to himself, feeding scraps to a shaggy dog. The kind of moment that never makes it into poems, but it should. Because this is what you fought for, isn't it? Not for temples or titles, not for praise from fickle gods, but for this, quiet, flickering peace in a world that can still warm itself by a fire. You sit again, back to the earth, face to the stars. You let your breath slow. Let your thoughts stretch like sleepy lions. And for just a moment, you feel at the weight of everything you've carried, finally lifting. Not gone, never gone, but lighter, easier, almost like grace. The wind shifts again, soft now, barely more than a sigh across your shoulders. You close your eyes, and the world becomes just sound. The whisper of distant reeds, the faint chirp of crickets, the hush of night settling in like a blanket across the hills. You lie down in the grass, the ground cool and forgiving beneath your back. The sky overhead is smeared with starlight, a quiet river of constellations flowing westward. You could trace everyone if you had the energy Orion, Pegasus, your old friend Leo, but not tonight. Tonight, you rest. The 12 labors are behind you now, but their echoes remain etched into your muscles, your memories. The myths spun endlessly around village fires and scratched onto urns by artisans with ink-stained fingers. The Nemean lion's pelt still guards your back. The Hydra's ghost still coils somewhere behind your ribs. And the golden apples, well, they tasted like sunlight and obligation. You think about how far you've come since that first desperate step into the forest. when the only thing louder than your sandals crunching in the dirt was the sound of your own doubts. You survived. More than that, you endured. You shaped chaos into order. You faced monsters that no one else dared name, and sometimes they looked like you, but you stood your ground anyway. That's the part people forget, not the strength, the staying, and the world. It kept spinning, unimpressed, perhaps, but not ungrateful. There's a debate still among scholars, philosophers, even the odd temple cook about whether the labors made you immortal. Some say yes, others no. Some say immortality is overrated unless it includes dental care and weekends off. But you know better. Immortality isn't about living forever. It's about being remembered. And you will be, because the boy who braved the wild to become more than a weapon, he mattered. Still does. And not because of who your father was or which monsters you defeated, but because you did what had to be done, even when it hurt, especially then. You let the silence grow like a seed in the dark. The owl is gone now. The firelight has faded, and sleep, slow and steady, begins to tug gently at the edge of your thoughts. You breathe in. You breathe out. Nothing to fight, nothing to prove. You made it, Hercules, your home. And now, with the stars resting just above your eyelashes and the warmth of the earth beneath your bones, there is nowhere left to go. Nowhere you must be. You are safe here. Each breath comes slower now, like waves washing gently against a quiet shore. Your body sinks into the ground, cradled by the land that once challenged you, but now simply holds you soft and still. Your heartbeat fades into the rhythm of the night, a steady, gentle pulse in a world that keeps turning, long after the sword has been lowered, long after the laurel has been placed. Let go of the weight you've carried. Let the images blur the lion, the stag, the fire-breathing cattle until all that's left is a soft glow behind your eyes, the after-image of a story well told. And in that quiet place, the world becomes simpler. You are not a hero tonight. You are not a legend. You are just here, breathing, resting, safe. Let the stillness carry you. Let the darkness protect you. Let the journey pause, because even gods, especially gods, deserve to sleep. The wind moves through the grass like fingers combing through hair. The sky hushes its stars into stillness, and the earth hums beneath you, low and constant, like a lullaby written long before words. This is the end of the road, but not the end of you. You are starlight now, soft and far and free,